Hey, Xerxes.
What's going on?
Not much. Here we go. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, it's all good.
Hey,
Drink
Hirsch.
more.
Sorry I'm late. Here's Ross. Big Ross, the host.
Who's teaching tonight?
Hirsch.
I'm Xerxes.
Hey,
I
sweet.
like the stash. I had
Like
actually
that?
not seen that. It's really
Yeah, this has been
nice.
my quarantine prize.
It's good.
Okay. Derek, you got this?
I do, yeah.
Okay. I gotta run. I'm sorry, guys. Wednesday's a
Thank you,
tough night
Gustav.
for me. Yep. Thanks. Bye.
All right.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This evening, we're going to be talking about buckler. I could give a couple minutes for other people to join, but this is going to be one of those sessions where you might actually have to talk, because this one has a little bit more dialogue with the students, and that role is played by all of you. I think most of you know that I like fighting sword and buckler. That's no surprise. The question, though, might be, why fight sword and buckler? This is the part where you have to unmute and talk.
Why do you fight sword and buckler?
Not why do I. Why should one? Why should anyone? Why should anyone ever fight sword and buckler?
It allows you to pick up targeting for your blocks, as well as make you more efficient for blocking, as well as it helps your offense and defense alike.
That is absolutely right. There's a couple other things. My generic answer is to improve prowess. Xerxes, your specifics were spot on. The other major thing that I like to add to that is movement and footwork. My favorite reason of all for fighting sword and buckler, though, is because it is fun. We're coming back to another question, so be ready to hit your unmute button. So when you see somebody fighting sword and buckler, what's the first thing that you think?
Hit them.
Hit them. And why? Why do you think you're just going to hit them?
There's a lot less defense. More you can move around, more you can open up.
This thing is tiny. How could they possibly block all of my shit with just a little buckler? And that is actually the very first advantage of sword and buckler is mental. It's like, okay, go ahead and hit me. And I got to tell you, when you first pick up sword and buckler, when you're like, oh, I want to fight sword and buckler, just expect to get hit more. You will block like you have a regular shield. You will block in the manner you've become accustomed to with whatever size shield you're used to fighting with. And so you will block normally and get smoked in the leg, and you will block normally and get smoked in the head, and you will block your offside and get smoked in the arm or body, until you start making the perfect block. And that's the other reason, as Xerxes mentioned, precision. When somebody throws a shot at my leg, I can't just sort of float my buckler down and expect to pick it up like a zone defense. I need to block exactly what they're hitting me with. And if it's a wrap, I better come a little deeper or a little all the way around. And if somebody throws a shot at my head, I can't just sort of throw something up here and expect it to cover everything coming into my head. I might need to block here or over here. So it improves your defense by forcing you to block exactly what they're throwing at you. But the other big benefit is that there's no way you can complain, oh, I couldn't see around my shield. Because if you can't see what your opponent is doing, then you're really not paying attention. Those of you who like to fight some single sword, and I love me some single sword, this is a great way to hone your offense and your movement and your range and to work out those fine elements of movement that give you a quick step in and a shot that's in your range and a step back where you either block or you don't have to, and you can wind up for your next shot. When you add a buckler to that, you suddenly have the opportunity to step in and make a shot, make one block, make another shot, and leave. And that is, in my opinion, the most fundamental mindset of buckler, which is choose when to step in and make your shot, make the block that either gets you in or lands right after your shot. If you need to block a second time, go ahead. But if you're standing in range, slugging away, you're probably not really fighting sword and buckler. You want to get in and make your shots and leave. I'm not saying you can't do that with a heater, but by all means. But by picking up a buckler, you are forcing yourself to engage in a more active, really a more integrated set of movements where every step and every opportunity to make a block or miss a block, to make a shot or miss a shot, is on that razor's edge where, yeah, you could get hit. And that's one of, I think you probably know, that's what I love about fighting is you get a chance to hit somebody and you could get hit. So I skipped some of the important first steps. What is a buckler? When you say sword and buckler, what do you mean? Well, a buckler is typically a small round shield. Some medieval writings characterize women's hats as twice as broad as a buckler. So it might be about the size of some period hats. Usually round, usually center grip. That about covers it. It can be smaller than this. It can be bigger than this. This is, I think, a 17-inch buckler from Windrose, formerly Mandrake style. And I just put a little athletic tape with a cord underneath it to make the grip super easy. Some people will say, do you fight thumb in or thumb out? I usually fight thumb out because it gives just a little bit more control if I'm trying to angle a shot or get it out of the way to pass a shot. I'm forgetting my outline because I'm getting excited about sword and buckler. So many things are the same. Some people say, well, fighting is fighting, and that's not wrong. But when you get into the nuances, there are a lot. Some of the things that are the same with sword and buckler: range, shot recognition, block selection, block delivery and recovery. All of those defensive things are the same. Range and target recognition, shot selection, shot delivery and recovery offensively. All of those things are the same. A very few important things are different. We're getting back to the part where you might have to unmute. What do you think is different with sword and buckler?
You get hit all the time.
You get hit all the time. That's what happens to me. I just get hit all the time. Actually, I used to get hit all the time. I started fighting sword and buckler about the time Yoshi got knighted. Maybe before. No, definitely before, because I built my first buckler bosses when I was still in college. So one of the other nice things about a buckler is if you've got a piece of plywood and a saber saw, you can probably find or make a boss super cheap, and suddenly you can have a shield that's way easier to make than just about anything else, and pretty darn cheap. So I made two of them when I was in college. And I made a 14-inch and an 18-inch, and I had pretty freely available plywood, and it was kind of thin. So I wound up getting really good at replacing the buckler. I would unbolt the boss and the handle, take the edging off, and relace it onto a new plywood shield blank, and bolt the boss and handle back onto the new plywood shield, and it would take me about 29 minutes to jack up the boss and drive a new buckler underneath it. So it's cheap and easy. And when you start to integrate some of the things about movement and blocking, you will find that people are surprised when you make a block. But you can see past your buckler, and you can see everything they're doing. Whereas if you have a big heater shield or a large round shield, you might be blocking off a quarter or a third of what their body is doing. Now you might be, or you might get really good at determining what somebody else is doing through only watching 2/3 of their body. That's fantastic. But it also makes you a little bit complacent about what your shield is actually blocking. And when you have nothing but a buckler to protect you, you're kind of motivated to make that block, to make 2 in a row, and to not mess up, to not buy the fake. So it really hones you to be very focused in your defense and focused in your offense. That's the biggest thing. Compared to a normal, regular size, a big shield, whether it's a round shield or a heater or oval or whatever, you may need to move a buckler further. You should be able to move it faster. You will be able to make blocks differently. If you have a strapped heater, somebody throws an off body, you kind of have to shift your shoulder and extend your arm and make the block over here. One of the nice things about blocking your off body is you can throw a center grip heater over here. I can still throw a shot past a body shot that's offside. I can make the block and throw a shot in the same moment because it's incredibly flexible. And the first time you do that and you make a block and hit your opponent, when they think, oh, he's blocking, he's got to be very committed to that offside defense. The look in their eye is priceless, and you will be like, I got to fight more sword and buckler. You also, the visibility you get to your opponent doesn't just translate into seeing the shots that they're throwing at you. It translates into being able to choose targets that you would not normally be able to hit around a larger shield you might be holding. I'm not saying you couldn't hit that spot, because as anybody knows, when you work at it, you can hit just about any spot on your opponent that you want to. But the ease with which you will find going from a headshot to an offside leg, or from a block to an offside leg, is just dramatically easier when you only have to throw around a buckler. However, just as I pointed out a little while ago, the difference between single sword, where you could do each of those things just as easily, and having a buckler to catch that shot so that you can fully commit to wherever you decide to land a shot. You can fully commit to that and make a block wherever they're throwing, wherever you're not clearing with your sword. It's what makes it a lot of fun, is that you have a lot more flexibility. I talked a little bit about movement. You will be able to move differently, partly, and this is why I keep coming back to the single sword analogy or the comparison. If you fought single sword in a melee, you know that you need to watch anybody who might be in range, and if you get a chance to take a step, throw a shot, block a shot, step back and feel safe, you have just had a very successful land a shot and survive it in a single sword melee. Well, the beauty about buckler is you get that thrill all the time, whether it's, and I have fought it in a melee, but it's not my favorite. But it's so much better than single sword because you can choose to deploy a block and a shot at the same time, and your flexibility for deploying a block and a shot, or a block over here and a shot wherever the shot is, can be great. Other thing about movement though is a lot of times people, and most of the time when people are teaching sword and shield, put your shield forward, use it to cover your leading leg. You can throw shots, if you step, you want to cover that as well. And as you step, you shift your shield to cover your leg, which is great. But after a little bit of time fighting with sword and buckler, you may find that taking a sword leg forward, and I find this is true with a lot of different center grip styles, not just buckler. Sword leg forward is a great place to start. The other thing that choosing to start on one foot or the other changes not just your range, where if I'm at the same place and I am shield leg forward, I'm barely touching the pedal here. I switch feet, same distance, I'm in range. Maybe I reached a little bit more, but I am that much closer while my body is still at the same distance because of the rotation of my shoulders. Adapt that to a half step out and a half step back, where you're not even taking a full step. And that half step is much quicker than a closing step. Smaller step gains you speed and flexibility. Let's see. So sword leg forward, very helpful. Play with it though. Other thing I was going to talk about was if you are like me, somebody who likes sword leg forward, and you like to be right here, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to start the fight sword leg forward. Maybe you're going to gauge the range, and you're going to be like, yeah, I definitely want to be sword leg back here so that when I close, I'm where I want to be with my sword leg forward. So it will provoke you. Buckler is a provocative style. It will provoke you to fight more flexibly and to think about how you're fighting so that your arrival at the target is timed perfectly for the moment that the shot opens up. When you want to arrive, make the block and leave. And honing that understanding, the feeling of the flow of a fight, can really change how you choose your decision about what to do in a fight. One of the things that's both a risk and a benefit is you might choose to block more often with your sword. In the purest sense, blocking with your sword is a mistake. If you can block with your shield, do it, because then you can strike with your sword. But two of the stances that when I teach this in face-to-face in the real world, I have a tendency to show people two stances. First one is simply a boxer stance. And whether you're sword leg forward, or sword leg forward, or sword leg back, it is more or less the same A-frame, but a boxer stance with your sword hilt right in front of your shoulder. And the buckler, wherever you find it's comfortable. I have a tendency, if I get too worried about my head, I bring it up and I'm liable to take a leg shot. If I get too lazy or too tired, I let it down to where my arm is almost level instead of centered on my center of mass, more or less. And then I have to work a little harder to bring it up to catch that headshot. I have to catch it soon. The boxer stance is absolutely an offensive, more offensive stance. I am saying to you, I'm going to hit you with this. I'm going to block with this. Go ahead, take your best shot so I can block it and hit you. That's essentially what this stance is saying is I'm going to step out of range. I'm going to step in and block and hit you. But the truth is, sometimes I'm going to throw a shot before, first. I'm going to open. And if I don't think I'm going to make the block with the buckler, my recovery is going to be my block. which brings me really to one of the second stances. If you're in a tower guard, this is actually incredibly clean and defensive. Somebody throws a shot over here, you can block the entire side. Same over here. Anytime you decide, oh, I have that block, you can return to split them. Defensive buckler, offensive sword. Fun fact, the blocks I just showed you, what's that look like?
I made real nice real young white girl. I need to totally blew her off.
It's like a greatsword block.
So I really don't like
Here, you can block there. Very similar stylistically.
Yeah.
He's not be tripping.
Yeah. Well, that's just stupid. You know, they were young and they were just talking about themselves. They
Elias, you
didn't-
should mute. If you've got a question, please go right ahead. Or comment. So I like to make that comparison for anybody who missed it. Sword and buckler is absolutely very similar to greatsword blocks in the more defensive posture. But unlike greatsword, you can make a block and just hit your opponent. Not quite as long as a greatsword, but it is absolutely as flexible. Things I've said that it's different. Said that. The other comparison I sometimes make is versus Florentine. I've made comparisons to single sword. I've made comparisons to sword and shield. I haven't made any comparisons to Florentine. And quite frankly, these are very different. I personally find more similarities between sword and buckler and greatsword than I do between sword and buckler and Florentine. That said, I can absolutely block like a greatsword, block like a greatsword, deploy a block and strike with one hand, or block with one hand and strike with the other. And truly, that's the benefit of Florentine is you can block with either hand and you can strike with either hand. So why isn't Florentine better? Well, for some people, they would always choose it. I would typically choose sword and buckler for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier, that it helps to hone that balance of everything you have to do in a fight. You have to be defensive, and you have to be offensive, and you have to move and strike. Move, strike, block in whichever order. You can strike, strike, block, 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 strike, however you want to pace those things. Fighting sword and buckler will help you play through those decisions. I do recommend making sure that you have armor you don't mind getting hit in, because playing with sword and buckler and trying new things with sword and buckler. I once watched a series of videos from Agilitas that Chartrain lent me. And there's all these different starting positions, low guard, and there's an offside left shoulder, the right-hander on the left shoulder. I was like, that just looks dumb. Well, there's got to be a reason they do it. If it's in the manuals from the period, there's got to be a reason they do it. So I played with it at practice, and there's absolutely reasons to start over here. They're kind of weird, and just like I said much earlier, when you go out and you see somebody with a buckler and you're like, oh, I'm going to hit him. When you go out and you see somebody with their sword on their wrong shoulder, you're like, what the heck? That looks lame. That's easy to see what they're going to do. And you're not wrong. But there's still a couple things you can do from there that are surprising. I'm going to pause for a minute, take a drink of water, and ask if anybody has any questions. I see one in the chat. Give me a second.
So you mentioned pace a few minutes ago. How much is changing tempo or adjusting tempo matter?
I think it's the essence of fighting, and like I said multiple times, to improve your prowess, play with a buckler, because if all you ever try to do is to speed up how quickly you hit, then you're really not controlling how you improve and how you choose the timing. If you choose to throw a really fast shot, and then a slow shot, and then the moment that you can choose to speed up rather than just always trying to be faster is a big difference. So that the cadence of the fight is absolutely important. And some people will say there's a beat, like a trot or a gallop with some opponent, and it depends both on the weapon they're fighting and your actual opponent, how quickly they respond. I think with a buckler that you are provoked to choose different paces and to be ready to take advantage of a moment quickly. Kean asks if my primary focus is on the block of the strike. And my favorite answer to this is each in its moment. It is a big challenge to strike while blocking or to block while striking. To do both in the exact same moment is difficult. And it's, I would say, relatively rare that both your block and your strike start or finish at the same time. Most of the time, you start a shot and start the block that you need to, or you start a block and start the shot that becomes an obvious opportunity. And that leads me to one of my other points with sword and buckler, that I think fighting sword and buckler has helped me to change my mental focus from I'm swinging a shot, I'm recovering, or I'm being defensive, I'm delivering a block, from an offensive in the moment to a defensive in the moment. It hasn't necessarily helped me to be more offensive or more defensive, but it has absolutely helped me to flip that mindset back and forth more quickly. Because the truth is, if I can't throw a shot with a sword and buckler, turn it into a block and turn it into another shot, all in quick succession, then I am not going to be particularly successful with sword and buckler. I might be able to follow some of the forms from the manuals and deliver a block, see the opening, make the shot. You know, I don't have to up my pacing or my cadence or change my timing. But when you can see more of your opponent around your shield and you see more openings on your opponent, suddenly your brain is going. It's like, oh, I want to hit him there. That doesn't look that hard to hit from here. And it's true, it's not. The hard part isn't hitting your opponent, it's not getting hit while you hit your opponent. One of the things I want to dispel, it's still a truth, but it's less bad. I had somebody very easily, handily, I would say, convince me when I was fighting with a center grip round that this is a bad guard. Didn't take them long, took me like two passes. They told me, I was like, oh, I don't know, and they showed me, I'm like, okay, you're absolutely right. And there are some flaws with this. Essentially, anytime I start from here, if I want to throw a shot, most people like need to draw back before you throw the shot. Well, that's not entirely true, but it's mostly true. The alternative to that is turning the movement into the shot so that it only goes forward, but you still have to contract to make that shot, which leads me to one of my favorite sword and buckler shots. Derek, you said secret, so here goes one. One of my favorite sword and buckler shots is absolutely block the flat snap, hit your opponent. The beauty of this is you can block the flat snap and hit under their sword, or you can block the flat snap and over their sword. The real key is beating them back to home. And it's hard. But when you deploy a block knowing that as soon as that block hits, as soon as there's that crack, you get to go. that mindset translates to a lot of different weapon systems, but honing it is natural with sword and buckler. Any other questions?
You had me look at a document yesterday. Do you want me to post that?
Yeah, I'll post it in chat.
Okay.
I think I talked about most of these things.
Now you mentioned
And
manuals, and I think you dropped Matthew's name there. Are there manuals that you guys recommend?
I would say there's a ton of stuff. I particularly like the I-33 stuff. This is my whole class outline in chat. Oh, I didn't send it to everybody. Sorry about that. Let me do that again. There. And if you can't reach that, catch me after this and say, hey, I couldn't view that. You know, it talks through a lot of the things, some of the things that I haven't said. The first time I taught this class was about 5 or 7 years ago at a Mid-Realm Academy of Defense. And I talked a lot about blocking and all sorts of stuff. And I don't actually remember some of the things that I wrote in this. But I have said that you will get hit. Things that I really like, I have left out one of the most important aspects of defense. If one is to imagine, and this is, oh, I regret not having actually I regret not having some lighting. If your opponent has a shield and you swing your sword, you come past in a cone. So their shield describes what I like to call, imagine your sword as a lightsaber and their buckler is casts a shadow. Then it casts a shadow in a cone. The nice part about that cone is that if you push the buckler towards your opponent, it gets really fat. You get a much wider cone. So as soon as your opponent does this, their small buckler is now casting, or you do this to your opponent, your small buckler goes from casting a small shadow of defensive area on your body to a large shadow of defensive area on your body. That's true, again, not just with buckler, but with any kind of center grip. And like one of my other analogies, because I can't leave my physics teacher nature behind, is you don't just want to fight out here. You see it in some of the manuals where the stance is out here, or maybe they're out here. But the truth is, even if your buckler is super light, this is quite a bit of work, and it opens up different things. If your opponent comes out and snipes your arm with a dropping shot, that sucks, because then you don't even have the buckler anymore. So most of the time, what you want to do with casting a larger shadow is to cast that shadow and come home. So you want to make a big shadow and come home. Sometimes you want to make a big shadow down here and come home, or a big shadow up here. So you kind of can do what I said you couldn't do before, like you do with a large shield, the zone defense, where you're blocking a large area. You absolutely can. You just punch out with it. And as long as you can intersect the arc that their sword's coming through, you catch it and you come home. Also with a small buckler, you can plant it on their basket hilt and just keep it there. If you wind up like this with your buckler on their basket and they move and you just sort of follow them, it's pretty annoying. I've had it done to me, and the easy, there's one really simple response, which is to reach back further than they can and hit them. But you can cast a big shadow, and you can also choose to be a little more active with a offensive defense. You still have to abide by the rules and not punch anyone with your buckler, or hit them with the edge of it. But if you make contact with their sword boss, a lot of times people will say, block their sword and then just follow their boss. If you can plant your boss right where their basket meets their sword and stay on them, you could probably get 2 or 3 good shots in before they figure out how to get free. Maybe on a good day. But I did want to reference something from, I'm going to share my screen, something from Medieval Manuals. This one. So this, when I talk about the shadow that your buckler casts, this is from an Italian, 16th century Italian fencing master. I found this on Wikipedia someplace, but I quoted where it was from so that you could see that this is, you know, what they're talking about with the lines of attack is very similar to what I describe as if your opponent's blade is a lightsaber, your buckler casts a shadow. This is from the I-33 manuals, and if you just search I.33 folio or plates, sword and buckler, you're going to get a gajillion of these. One of the things I like about this one in particular, and this is actually a scan of the original, you can see a couple aspects that are really common that I haven't mentioned. First of all, the bottom stance is absolutely what I was describing with shield leg forward, sword cocked on your right shoulder. It leaves you ready to strike and ready to block, but movement is almost certainly required. One of the other things I want to point out, in case any of you haven't encountered this in the period manuals, I'm not really a medieval scholar, I just play one once in a while, but any of you who've taken up counter steel or any kind of fencing probably recognize that you have to protect your hand because it's a legal target area, unlike the armored combat that we do. So in most of the manuals, what you're seeing is the, I really should have put some lights out here. The buckler is being used almost exclusively to protect the hand so that you can strike and have your hand protected. And again, this turns out a lot like what I was talking about a moment ago with greatsword. Although you can split your defense and turn the offense to at the moment you choose. Other things you'll find in the manuals, sometimes certain things are obscured, like in this one right here. That was bad. We'll see if that was it or not. Yeah, I remembered. It's actually really hard to tell if the right hand is above or below the buckler. So if he's on top of the buckler and blocking right behind, or if he's coming under and he's blocking over. It's probably over with the shield, but
Are
it's
you showing a
difficult to say.
different graphic?
Oh, let me, I am, and let me fix that. I thought I had shared all of these. Sorry about that. So I'll throw this into chat or share a link as well, but there's so many sources that have the original plates here from the I-33. It's really, I'm not even going to attempt to give a comprehensive view of what I-33 is, but it's one of the most widely read because it's an early extant set of plates on sword and buckler. That is most of what I came to talk about now that it's completely dark outside. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you mentioned steel, and obviously my aspect a little bit different because I'm a steel fighter. Do you use your buckler to track a particular target on the body? And let me Let me show you my example here, maybe. Video. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. So on mine, I have cheat codes where,
And on B, go on.
yeah. So this right here, I put that target on their sword's elbow. And if I'm at the right distance and this is up, usually every shot coming in will be caught by the boss if I keep my arm fully extended.
Okay.
But that's my style. Do you have something that you like track a target for a offensive defense so you can catch and strike at the same time?
So I try
Anything
not
like
to
that?
look at any one thing, and I really don't look at my shield. So I know sometimes when I make a block, I will rotate, probably mostly 90 degrees or so. I am literally gonna turn on the light. I should have turned on earlier. So I may twist my wrist about 90 degrees. So let's see. How's that? Yeah. So I may bring the buckler up and come over for a block where I've just turned my wrist so that the straight up part of the handle is at about 2 o'clock. But similarly, if I come up for a block over here, I'm going to come to about 10 o'clock with the point of the handle. I don't look at it. I don't think about it. It's just the natural movement for one of those is to twist my wrist a little bit. And I really don't look at the edge of my buckler. What you're describing might actually be very useful for training certain things. But in terms of choosing a target on my opponent, I really just try to see it with my eyes and choose it with my brain.
I also do it because the thing gets heavy. And so if that, when I start seeing it start dipping down and that X is not on a particular offensive target, then I better get my ass in gear and get the X back online. So
That's fair. You said something about identifying a target that reminded me of something that I completely forgot to mention. And I don't know how dark it is on screen. You guys still see me?
Not really.
All right. Well, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to talk through it. I'm going to talk through it with a headshot. So if somebody throws a shot at your head, you actually don't want to buy the fake and block too soon and have them hit you in the body or the leg. So you only want, that's one of the big things with a buckler is you only want to arrive at the block right as the shot hits. And that's one of the things that helps lend to the flow is you make the block and you come back to where you could block anything, which is usually kind of centered. I find elbow cocked about this angle gives me movement up or movement down. Down is easier because gravity is on your side, which means for a leg shot, you actually want to wait until the very last moment. You don't want to commit to your block until they have committed to their shot. And once they have committed, you want to push it down, catch the block, and bounce it right back up. You never want to go down for the leg block and wait for the shot to arrive. You have just broken your own flow and potentially bought a fake that might not even be headed for your leg anymore. So if you deliver the block just in time to make to block the shot that they have thrown, it hones your ability to not buy a fake and to deliver a precision block at just the right moment. So it hones your timing as well as your perception of whether your opponent is sending a real shot or not.
Would it be fair to say that you're using your buckler kind of like if you were trying to actually catch his blade with your hand? Is that a good analogy?
No, although I have used the edge of my buckler or an edge of a shield to convince somebody to pull on something, try to get around an edge just so that they're contesting for position just for an instant. I more likely, Ian, I'm punching a block.
Okay.
And it's gonna, it's almost like I'm like when I mentioned trying to do a sticky hands and stay on their basket, even if it's just for a moment, because it can be can change the mind game. That's a punch. You come out for that punch, and usually you come back. If I only rotate my buckler, I can catch a lot of shots. But when I don't want to rotate for a block and wait for it, I come out and I catch the block sooner with a punch, and I come back in, and when I'm returning, I have already deployed my block, and if I make contact with their sword, then I know that I can bring that block back in, and when I do, I have a natural opposition, just like when you're walking. When you swing your arms when you walk, it's because it's conservation of energy. It makes it easier for you to walk. So if I deploy a block, the natural thing to do after I make contact with their sword is to pull it back in. And the natural thing to do when I'm pulling it back in is to throw a shot. It's easier. But most of the time I'm pushing to catch their shot right at the corner of the boss and the flat part of my buckler. That was probably way too loud, sorry.
Okay. Do you find that you thrust more or strike more with this stuff?
That's a good question, and I honestly don't know. I do thrust. I probably strike a little more. I actually don't think I strike any more or any less than with a heater. Maybe I thrust just a little bit less, but I'm not sure. I do believe pretty firmly that a good use of the thrust is mixing it in so that it is not the obvious attack.
I think something important to tack onto that, sorry, this is Xerxes, is with buckler, your range is a very important part of not only your offense, but your defense. So as he said earlier, you're probably not going to get into that A range and brawl it out for a bit. You're going to throw a few shots and get back out. So having a thrust keeps them at bay, keeps something dangerous between you and them, so you can plan your offense and you can set up what you need to so you can get in and get out really quick. And you don't constantly have this pressure on you. When it comes to a buckler fight, like you said, your defense is a lot smaller, and you gain most of your defense from that umbrella that you get when you stick your buckler out, create that shadow around your body a lot more. So your defense comes from having distance from your opponent, and having a thrust kind of keeps them at bay. But for the most part, it's not something you're going to rely on. It's a lot more of setting up your actual strikes when you're coming into range, that you can get in, get out, make sure it's safe, whether you're picking up that block to close the range, throw your strikes and come back out. But if somebody's on you constantly, you're not going to have that. So having that thrust keeps people at bay because it's such a mysterious shot. It can come from anywhere. It can come from any time.
And even if the only thing you get out of a thrust is that your opponent hesitates, that brief, he's thrusting at me, can be the moment that you step completely out of their range and you have no more concerns about where their shot could land because you're completely out of range. Just because as Xerxes, as you said, you're fighting and you bring that thrust at him and you use it, whether you land the thrust or whether you use it as a distraction to get out of range. Playing the range is absolutely the key element for improving your sword and buckler and improving your decisions about what you're going to do in terms of offense, defense, and footwork to get into range, to change an angle, to get out of range, all in conjunction with everything you do. I think that's why I love sword and buckler, because it's all tied together in a slightly more dangerous balancing act. Thanks for that comment, though, Xerxes. It really did. I really gave not enough conversation to how important controlling the range is. And I say that as if it's just something you do. Like you just flip a switch and you're controlling the range, which is bullshit.
Yeah, no,
But the truth is, contending for control of the range 100% of the time is important, whatever weapon you're fighting with. If you ever go, oh, this person's got better footwork than I do, they're going to control the range. You've just given them a huge advantage.
I agree. I think footwork is incredibly important when it comes to buckler because you have so much less ability to just pick up easy shots. You have to be able to move. I mean, unfortunately, we lost the light, but movement is what will not only help create your defense because you have to move out of shots. You have to incorporate moving away from your opponent to gain that range back, to pick that shot up, gives you more time to recognize the shot and pick it up with your buckler, but as well as with your offense, because as long as you keep moving and your footwork is incorporated, you can go from a defensive step back into an offensive step forward.
You point out, I mean, by just talking about that, the few times that I've played sword and buckler recently, I realized that I was much too static, and that's definitely something that I know. I guess you go out with sword and shield enough, you automatically sometimes just forget that that's not the same thing.
You're right about that, Dirk. I was at an event, and I remember, I don't remember when it was, but I remember really clearly that I was between reins. And I went out with my heater, my center grip heater that I had literally one crown with, and I was fighting, and I felt this stuff was getting handed to me. And then I was like, I went and I put down my heater, and I picked up sword and buckler, and suddenly I was moving. I was active. I was playing the range the entire time, and I was like, okay, I've got my game back together. I am, ready to fight with heater and be mobile. And so then I went and I picked up my heater again and was static again. So my mindset, I was having trouble. I knew what I intended to do when I picked up my buckler was to reset my head game with mobility and control of the range. But then when I put the buckler back down and picked up center grip heater, I returned to my exact same static, minimal movement with a center grip heater.
It's a very good training tool. I found when I was getting lazy with I don't have a large shield as it is, but just your normal shield, you get into this whole, I call it laziness, but you get very comfortable with a larger shield, whatever shield that you're used to, heater, center grip, or whatever. I use it as a training tool for myself as well as my squires when I notice that they just seem to want to close down into what they're used to. Their cozy whoopee, their blanket, they can sit there and they can block a lot, but it really changes your offense and your defense and your mindset in a fight when you're constantly under duress with having a buckler. So it's an amazing training tool, and it gets you back in fighting mode.
That is a fantastic characterization. I like the phrase under duress. And there's a tremendous amount of research that shows that you learn better when you're under some stress. And anybody who's found themselves facing like my best fight, stressing yourself intentionally with a smaller shield and intention to go out and improve your footwork and control the range and your tenacity with which you could deliver a shot and pivot immediately into a defensive mode that maybe gets you back out of range, or maybe just makes a block and allows you to open up another shot, is a sequence of things that can help you to train your brain and your body to work in concert and to deliver each of those things, the precision blocks under pressure, and a rapid response when you see an opening. And I'm going to use a phrase that helped me quite a bit when I was working on winning crown the first time. I kept finding myself throwing target was not a target when I got there. I had to start looking for the opening just as it was beginning, just as the target was beginning to come open. And when you add that to your repertoire and to your mindset when you're training to stress yourself and push yourself, it's actually just a heck of a lot of fun. I moved to where I've got a light. Can you guys see the buckler knee?
Yeah, we can see it just good. They're just fine.
Fantastic. I wanted to reiterate what I said before about picking up a shot. If somebody fakes a leg shot and I buy it too soon, they're just going to curl that up and they're going to hit me in the arm or the head. And if they throw a leg shot and I wait until the last minute, I wait till they're really committed, my block is going to look like this. And when I get to the pause, I catch their shot and I come back up. And it's also much more efficient. If you actually stop your buckler there, sure, it's lighter, but it's still more work to bring it back up from a dead stop than it is to bounce it at the bottom, to bounce it off of their sword and bring it back up. So when I say deploy the block just in time to catch their shot, don't commit to your block until they've committed, not to where they're here, to where they've committed to the target. That's when you commit to the block, because you shouldn't have to move very far. You might start down, but you're not gonna have an even movement that's like, oh, I'm gonna block the leg shot and then I'm gonna come back up. You're gonna have it looks like they're going for the leg. Well, maybe they're going for the head. But if you go, oh, maybe they're going for the leg, poof, you accelerate at the end. It's a slow track and then a finish that's that punch block I was talking about earlier. And if it's a head shot, you slow track up, punch out a little. So instead of just trying to curl and make the block here, you might use multiple muscle groups to bring it out and cast a bigger shadow and to accelerate, to shorten the wait time. Because if I actually just bring the buckler to here, I have a smaller defensive zone and I'm waiting until they're fully extended. Maybe I'm actually waiting for the shot. I don't want to wait for the shot. I want to block it and step into it and accelerate the pace of the fight. That's what punching out does. It speeds up the pace of the fight. Whew. Man, I wish Malcolm was in armor. Any other questions? You guys have been great. I hereby challenge all of you to have a buckler by the time this is all over and come fight me as soon as we can.
I would love that.
Because I know you'll all enjoy it.
Yep.
Plus, I'll teach more. I'll probably learn some things too. That's the other secret. That's truly the open secret, the most open secret, is never stop learning. Always listen to advice and ask for it if you feel like somebody might have some.
All right. Thank you, Hirsch, for your lessons and the links and definitely the direction to the manuals. Every time we have one of these, I always take something away from it that I either need to refresh or I've learned or maybe looked at from a different light. So again, that happened tonight. So thank you. We will be meeting again next week. Count Aggie will be teaching. I believe it will be he'd been recommended, and I asked him to teach a class on breaking down video for improving fights. So next week, it'll be him teaching, and we will keep doing this as long as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks for asking me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
enjoyed seeing you again. You take care.
Good to see you and hear your voices.